Today I am joined by Dr. Douglas Graham. Hello, Doug. How are you doing?
I'm really happy. I'm really excellent and expecting even better, Julia. How about you?
I'm doing good too, thank you.
Glad to
That's
hear it.
awesome to hear. And today we're going to have a super fun conversation about fats. So low fat versus no fat versus high fat. And I thought to maybe give a little introduction to everyone who's new to the 80-10-10 diet, which Dr. Douglas Graham is the author of that book, which I highly recommend. If you haven't read it yet, it's the
Thanks.
Raw Food Bible. So definitely make sure to check it out. And just for those new to this way of eating, could you share a little bit about some of the major benefits that you have experienced and found also with working with others from eating low fat? Yeah.
Well, sure. Uh, Different people definitely notice the same things and then say, well, this was the most important thing that happened. And others say, no, this was the most important thing that happened. For me, the biggest benefit was coordination. My brain got more coordinated. Um, and after going raw and after going 80-10-10 and having the experience, because first it was just a philosophical idea that raw foods made sense and raw foods are the model set by nature or demonstrated in nature that every creature eats raw food. Um, and so I had to find out afterwards. Then I started looking into the science behind why it works out. So um, I understood the nutrition up front, but not why does all this stuff make so much sense? Why does it work so well? So when I say coordination, um, I was an extremely accident prone child. I thought I could do things and I'd have a lot of accidents where I could almost do things, but not quite. And I had an experience frequently that I found out was common amongst humans. And that was that I'd be talking with a friend and we're having a lovely conversation. And then maybe one of us says, oh, I have a story about that. And they would go off and tell the little story. And then we were talking some more. And then the next thing you know, I'd go, oh, and I have a story about that, and da 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 da, and da 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 da. And then eventually I would look back and say, what were we talking about originally? And the other guy would go, I don't know. And neither one of us could remember what we were originally talking about.
Mm.
Has that ever happened? Yeah.
Not anymore recently. I feel
Oh,
like,
not anymore. Well,
but
then
yeah, definitely.
there
Yeah.
was another thing that would happen. My dad really, bless his soul, man. My dad helped me with vocabulary a lot. In fact, we had a tradition in my family of learning 5 new words every single week. And my dad would give me 5 words I'd never heard of. And a week later, I would use those words in a functioning sentence to make sure that I really understood what those words were. And then we do 5 more. And 250 words a year, uh, you learn a lot of words. So I sort of pride myself on my vocabulary and especially a vocabulary of relatively simple words, short words, easy words. And often I'd be talking with someone and I knew the word that I wanted to say and I couldn't come up with the word. It just wouldn't. And eventually I would describe the word and the other person would say, "Oh yeah, you mean voracious or whatever the word was. And I go, yeah, that's it. Has that ever happened where you couldn't think of the word? It was on the tip of your tongue and you just couldn't come up with it?
It has happened for sure.
It has happened. So it turns out this is a fairly common human experience to a point that it even has a name. And I went raw and that stopped happening.
Mm,
I went 80-10-10, and the mental clarity, the recall, the ability for learning over and over and over, mental faculties came online. My remembering things I learned in school, all my teachers' names, um, just stuff that I thought I had really not even learned at all that I now knew very well. Uh, Everything just fell into place so well, including the realization that what I was experiencing mentally was the same as what I was experiencing physically. It was uncoordinated effort. And so my mental coordination came about. All of a sudden, oh, I can coordinate my words with my memory, with my speech, and it all comes out. I can remember the train of thought and I can digress and digress and digress and digress and then eventually bring it all back and say, and this demonstrates this. This is what we were talking about. That's why I went off on this tangent, it seemed, but actually it made a point. And my physical coordination, the accident proneness went away. That stopped happening. All of a sudden, my movements became highly, highly refined, much
mm,
more controlled. Do I ever have an accident? Sure, everybody occasionally makes an error. Errors are great. Errors broaden my awareness of the difference between what I envision and the reality. I go,
mm,
oh, there's a difference. Let me correct that. Let me correct it. So uh, for me, this was the big change was my mental faculties, which were always there for everyone. They're always there, but they'd been masked. They'd been held back in check, forgotten almost, just covered. And all of a sudden, I had access to my fuller self, and and that was a good feeling. And it's one that I find has tremendous value. And for myself, being of value for other humans is critically important. It's critically important. Being of value, being productive, being a useful member in society, these things add a joy that is inherent in human beings from infancy. When a mother gives a baby something, the baby very often also turns around and gives the mother something.
mm.
Oh, give the little baby a little bit of food, and then the baby will feed the mommy. It's inherent to give back and be part of a community, a functional part. So getting old enough to retire or getting old enough for retirement um, has never been alluring for me. I want to remain a functional, independent, productive, useful, necessary part of my human community.
Mm. That's
And
amazing.
that got much improved tremendously strengthened as I went raw. Hard to imagine. Oh yeah, my physical health improved and yeah, I became way more tolerant to sunlight and temperature changes. And yes, I got better at sports as a result. And sure, I used to suffer with allergies and that stopped. And lots of things improved and my digestion got better and my emotions toned a bit. I became more aware of my emotions and yet less likely to just fly off the handle angry.
Mm.
Didn't it? I got aware of them sooner so I could actually pay attention, recognize my emotions, and experience them. All of that happened. But the big thing for me was that m- messages in my heart could go to my brain and come out of my mouth and I could express myself in a way that offers value to the world.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. And now you've talked a lot about the benefits. Would you say there are any risks of going too low in fat? Because the way of practicing a raw food diet you recommend is one that is low in fat, which I think is amazing because it allows us to really eat a lot of fruit. But would you say there are any risks?
Yeah. So I made an error early on using a word that was inappropriate. And me being exceptionally accurate and precise in my use of words is important as many people misinterpret anyway. So if I start out imprecise, the misinterpretation gets even worse. I used the word low fat, or I allowed the use of the word low fat in computer conversations and chats and boards and message boards and forums and things. Uh, it was only meant as low when compared to the high fat diet of the Western world. It was only relatively low. Why? Low implies a problem. I'm low in petrol. I'm my B12 levels are low. Um, my energy is low. It always implies an issue, a problem that needs correcting. Whereas low fat diet was meant and should have been, could have been correctly stated as appropriate levels of fat. The appropriate levels of fat have been, the appropriate levels of fat for human beings have been predetermined by nature and are supplied for by nature when eating the food that is appropriate for humans, which are fruits and vegetables. All fruits, all vegetables contain some fat, just like all fruits and all vegetables contain some protein. So it's impossible to eat a no fat diet when eating fruits and vegetables. Cherries have fat, watermelon has fat, celery has fat. Yes, it's very little, but it's there. So I started out by saying it's impossible to eat a no fat diet. In fact, if I were to eat a diet of only fruit, only vegetable, no nut, no seed, not even any fatty fruits like the olive or the avocado or the durian or any fatty fruits, aki, I would still be eating about 7 to 8% of my total calories from fat, just eating fruits and vegetables.
And would you say there are any risks of going that low and not eating any overt fats like avocado, nuts, and seeds and durian?
So let me finish the last part and then we'll do that
Mm-hmm.
part. Okay.
Okay.
So the only way to eat a no fat diet would be to consume only two things, neither of which is food. One would be protein powder out of a can or out of whatever the container, but protein powder, isolated protein powder, which has no fat. And the other would be to consume sugar, like out of a bag or out of a box or wherever it comes from, which has no fat. If we ate no fat and only sugar and protein powder, which would be a crazy way to eat, health would decline and the body would still manufacture fat from those two things. If sufficient calories were consumed, you could even possibly get fatter eating only those two things. The body can manufacture fat from sugar and it can manufacture fat from protein. However, certain fats are considered essential. There's many different kinds of fat, and certain fats are considered essential. And those essential fatty acids, the word essential means we must get the fat from our diet. The body fails fails to manufacture these fats. They must be consumed. And this is what essential means in the world of nutrition. Not that it's important, but that the body doesn't manufacture it, it must be consumed. The same is said for certain proteins. Many amino acids the body manufactures, and certain ones must be consumed, and those are called essential amino acids. Nature and our design and our designer, our creator, smart enough to make it so that no matter what we eat, we can manufacture all essential carbohydrates. And so there are no designated essential carbohydrates, meaning, oh, these are carbohydrates important? Yes. Are they essential? Yes. Every cell of the body is fueled by carbohydrate called glucose. Yet there are no essential carbohydrates in the world of nutrition simply because the body can manufacture glucose from no matter what it eats. Whether you're eating nothing but protein powder, you can still manufacture glucose. If you're eating nothing but oil out of a bottle, you can still manufacture glucose. The problem comes in when eating those refined foods is that many, I don't know the exact number, but somewhere around 100,000 named nutrients are also utilized when we utilize glucose for fuel in the manufacture, maintenance, and production and reforming of cellular functions. We utilize all the minerals, all the vitamins, all the antioxidants, all the phytonutrients. We just go on and on and on. Hundreds And again, some people say there's 500,000. Some people say we don't even know how many. It's a very safe guess to say 100,000 nutrients are utilized, each in their own proportions, as glucose is used for fuel, including fat. Hence, nature provided the backdrop saying there's fat in all human food. All fruits, all vegetables have fat. So the zero fat diet doesn't create a problem of no fat. It creates a problem in the same way as with sugar. When we utilize fats, other nutrients are called for. When I utilize glucose, fat is called for. The zero fat diet will result in problems simply because the only thing you're eating is protein powder and sugar out of a bag, refined sugar. And without the other nutrients that are essential for utilizing glucose as fuel, health is going to predictably decline. What will be that decline will be different for different people based on their genetic strengths and weaknesses, their genetic predispositions. So some people might go deficient in a certain mineral before other people go deficient in something else. Some people might lose mental faculty. Some people might this, that, or the next. The zero fat diet is contraindicated for human health.
Mm.
What we're calling low fat, a diet of solely fruits and vegetables, without nuts, seeds, avocado, olives, ackee, durian, anything considered fatty. Now we get into a controversial area. And the question becomes, is it possible to live, and for how long, without expressing the rest of that sentence, which is until something bad happens? Well, my goal, my whole function in life has been dedicated towards health and helping others reach their health by pointing out the bullseye of the target. Not just saying, hey, there's a target in the room, aim for it, but here's the bullseye of the target. This is the ideal. And I express my thoughts, and I notice afterwards many people refine my thoughts in ways that are inaccurate. So I said 80-10-10, and people go, oh, 90-10-0. And I go, no, zero doesn't work. Zero protein doesn't work. Zero fat doesn't work. Zero carb doesn't work. All of them will lead to predictable health decline that will be unique to the individual. I go a diet of fruits and vegetables, and people go, well, really all we need is fruit. And I go, predictable health decline. Now, I define fruit in a very specific way, and people who use a different definition can live on just fruit. I say fruit is fruit the way I think of it in the kitchen. When I cut a cucumber, it's a vegetable in the kitchen. But according to a botanist, a cucumber is fruit. Most people don't have much botanical training, and so I use kitchen because most people have been in a kitchen. Few people have opened up a botany book. So The foods that I think of as fruit in the kitchen, when people attempt to live on just fruit, predictable health decline happens, and it usually happens between 9 to 18 months. Very few people make it past 9 to 18 months before they start seeing health decline, either mental, physical, emotional, or all any combination. Can we live now? The question was on fruits and vegetables, no fatty foods. Yes, it's possible. It's pushing a limit though. And what many people find is that they become far skinnier than they really wanted to be. It's difficult eating sufficient volume for a variety of reasons. Number one, it's a lot of volume, and people, the mindset of how much should we eat changes. Number two, eating that much volume starts to stress digestive capacity. And and so if I'm eating a lot of volume in order to get the calories, but then I can't digest it, well, nobody likes walking around with digestive distress. The the mountain gorilla has this issue. The mountain gorilla doesn't get to eat as much fruit as it would like to eat. Why? There's fruit there in the mountains. Imagine a 500 pound, imagine a 220 kilo gorilla out on a skinny branch trying to get fruit. It just doesn't work. 200 kilos doesn't go out on skinny branches. He's not a squirrel. So the mountain gorilla simply doesn't have access to massive quantities of fruit and ends up eating lots and lots and lots of vegetables in order to get calories. As a result, it stresses his digestive capacity, and the mountain gorilla is known for, among other things, this huge pot belly that sticks out in front because the vegetables are constantly fermenting and he ends up with a bunch of wind. And it's nowhere near as pleasant in a zoo environment or in a kept environment of some type where the animal's being fed by humans. He'll naturally tend towards eating more fruit. Fruit having the caloric density of 10 to 40 times that of leaves makes it easier for the gorilla to get the sufficient number of calories without eating the massive volume of fiber that leads to all that wind and digestive distress. So it leads us down an interesting pathway, which is called skinny fat. It's easy. Most people think of fat and overweight as being somehow synonymous. And I'm going to say that there's overweight is one thing, and over fat is another thing. I know people who are over fat. In other words, they carry too much body fat for health, but they're underweight. So how do they do that? They're also under muscled. They have very little muscle development, and they might look nice, especially if they're in their, teens, 20s, 30s. They look okay, but they're carrying too much body fat for health. And they're under muscled. So they're underweight. They could be supermodels. Many supermodels are notorious for this. They're underweight and yet over fat. That trend is changing as supermodels are starting to become a bit more fit. We're seeing a trend towards fitness in the modeling industry, which is lovely. Um, when people find out that they aren't as well muscled as they thought they were, because they lose all that fat padding going on a fruit and vegetable raw diet, they tend to, at least at first, lose more weight, lose more body fat than they realized they were carrying. They often say to me, I lost all my muscle on your diet. Well, there's no science behind this. All science says that when I'm eating sufficient calories or even close to sufficient calories, the only weight I will lose is fat. There's no diet that results in muscle loss. It's impossible to lose muscle while there's fat to be lost as long as I'm maintaining activity.
Mm.
If I become inactive, I can lose my muscle volume. Is this due to sedentary, just plain being sedentary, the muscles will shrink in size a bit. It's called disuse, atrophy. But the muscle will come right back when I start using it. I didn't actually lose muscle, it just shrank. But if I'm maintaining activity and eating an insufficient number of calories, I lose fat. And what I find out is, oh, I don't have as much muscle as I was giving myself credit for having.
Mm.
And I'm actually a very skinny guy. And I'd like to have a little more muscle than I do. That's going to be some work in the gym, most likely, or somewhere. And yet, what people say instead is, I lost all my muscle when I went raw. Nah, didn't happen. What you found out is you don't have as much muscle as you think. So, yes, it's possible to eat a very low fat diet. In fact, health happens when we eat a very low fat diet. Yet, somewhere's around 10% of calories from fat, somewhere's between, let's say, 5 and 15 for a range. Could be 3 and 17. I don't know. But somewhere's around 5 to 15% of calories from fat on an average in the course of your month or in the course of your year. That's a healthy average for human beings. It would be reflected by the fact that we're eating a diet of fruits and vegetables.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that. And just to wrap up this interview, um, I also want to share that from my experience, it's also been hugely beneficial to also eat some overt fat and not exclude them completely. Also, I feel like my
I eat some.
skin has gotten softer and hormonal health and everything just improves. But it is definitely important, I would also say from my experience, to not go overboard with the fat. So maybe just to wrap up, could you share some tips on how people can find that edge of hitting that spot where they eat the perfect amount of fat and don't go overboard
Sure,
to the point where it
sure.
can cause,
So
you know,
I'm going to do two things actually. Number one, I'm going to mention when I lower the fat in my diet, I improve my uptake of glucose from the bloodstream. So I nullify any possibility for diabetes. Number two, when I lower the fat in my diet, I improve the uptake of oxygen from the bloodstream.
mm, yeah.
So I breathe easier, which in terms of health, anti-cancer, sports performance, thinking clarity, everything improves when I lower the fat in my diet down to somewhere's around 10%, plus or minus 5. How to design a diet that allows for some fat consumption without being so restrictive as, say, only fruits and vegetables, no fat whatsoever, without going overboard. Eat fruit for breakfast, eat fruit for lunch, eat all the fruit you want before your dinner, vegetables and fat. and you'll have it down to a science. Eat fat once per day and only once per day, and you'll really not have to be concerned. The limits become quite obvious. How much are we talking? We're talking somewheres between 30 to 50, even 15 to 50 grams of fat per day is going to run as more than enough for most people.
Mm.
Uh, for an average lady, 20 grams of nuts or seeds is about enough. For a guy, about 30 is more than enough. Going much past that, go 50% past that, and you're hitting upper limits to where you're going to start to see predictable health decline. Double it, and you're already like gaining weight and not being happy and nullifying many of the things that let's remember that malnutrition doesn't mean deficiency. Malnutrition means deficiency or excess. And so many of the symptoms that are associated with too little fat are also associated with too much fat. Dry skin can happen from too much fat just as easily as it can from not enough. So hit the sweet spot. Allow your another way of doing it. Some people say, "Oh, I just eat fat for my dinner meal or with my dinner meal, but I do it on alternate days. I have a non-fat day, I have a fatty day. I have a non-fat day, I have a fatty day. The non-fat day keeps me alert and awake and aware of how much dependence I'm placing on my fats and gets me into the habit of eating lots of fruits and vegetables. And then the fatty days, I enjoy the fats. I like the flavors. I like the textures. I like the consistency, the mouthfeel, the satiation that comes with it. Keeps all my hormonal health right where I want it to be without going overboard.
Mm. Thank you so much, Doug, for all those tips and
Time
insights.
sensitive. Okay. Bless your heart. It's a treat to be with you. I hope you'll have me back. Uh,
Hmm.
People can
And for
find me at
everyone with,
foodandsport.com. I'm sure you'll put it in the link.
I
And
will
bless you, Julia. Look forward to
bless you
seeing
too,
you
Doug.
again.
Yeah, look forward to see you too. Bye, everyone.
Bye
Thanks for
bye.